Folks, Andrew picked an awful weekend to go to Spain.
To be in total fairness to him, though, like this dragged a little bit.
Yes, it did. Folks, in case you're wondering what it is, if you've been living under a rock for the last
Florida
2
State
hours.
34, Virginia. No,
Yeah, so hold on. So real quick, we were discussing yesterday when we were going to record our Virginia Tech Florida State recap. I was in Tallahassee for that game. There were a few things I wanted to say, but we kind of got the vibe that waiting would be a prescient decision. And as it turns out, folks, around 4 p.m. today, Virginia Tech's news that they were hiring James Franklin was reported, including by the gentleman in this podcast that isn't me, Mike McDaniel at Sports Illustrated. Virginia Tech gets their guy. It's been a hell of a ride, boys. We'll say that. Mike, you were involved in the reporting of this process quite heavily from start to finish. Obviously, you helped break the news earlier today. Talk to us about the process in terms of what you can report on now that Virginia Tech has got their guy.
It dragged a little bit, I would say. So, from a timeline standpoint, I mean, obviously, Pete Thamel goes on ESPN. A lot of this is like agent speak, right? So, I think the thing to know about these coaching searches is that when you have an agent like Jimmy Sexton and you have a reporter the caliber of Pete Thamel, how this works is those guys generally get the scoop a little bit before everybody else when it like actually breaks. That's what I would say happens probably most often. When you're dealing with an agent like Jimmy Sexton, he is talking to the big reporters almost exclusively. In this case, Pete Thamel, right? So like the College Game Day report on Saturday, that was it was pretty funny how it was phrased. It was like early stages of stocks, right? That was like, oh, hey everybody, Franklin's the guy at Tech, and like they're getting close, right? To say early stages of talks like that is like couch it. What actually went down is Friday night, Franklin signed a memorandum of understanding, which basically locks you into negotiating with Tech, is essentially like the easiest way to put it. Puts you in a position where you've agreed to the major terms of the deal, right? And You're basically, unless something goes wrong which it does happen, right? When you're trying to finalize a contract, especially when you're paying him what they're going to end up paying him, which I think is going to be over $11 million a year. It takes a while to get this stuff finalized. So not to say that these things don't fall through. They do, and they have in the past, but like when you hear early stages of talks on Saturday, I mean, that was crazy. So all the flight tracking on Friday night, that was like legitimate stuff, right? Like, I can't believe that. I saw that circulating around. I was like, I can't believe this. Like, is this real? It's like, yeah, that's real. Yeah. That's legitimate. LSU just had something.
Showed up at the airport to greet the private jet that it just returned.
Got Venmo'd thousands of dollars.
Yeah, he had a selfie with Bud Foster,
which was hilarious, asking him what a memorandum of understanding was. And he's like, what are you talking about? So, yeah, I mean, Bud was pretty influential in this search. I mean, he was a guy that was pretty key from the Virginia Tech side to trying to get this done. Obviously, if you have somebody of Bud Foster's caliber who can make a pitch, that's pretty significant. Brent Pry didn't scare Franklin away from this either. Like, the thing I'll say about Pry, and like we've mentioned it on this podcast before, he loves Virginia Tech. Like, it didn't work out for him here, but he loves Blacksburg and he loves Virginia Tech. Obviously,
still lives in Blacksburg, by the way.
He's still in Blacksburg.
I've been told is flying a Tech flag still out in front of his house.
Yeah. So like he's a Tech guy, you know, and Franklin's obviously his boy, and this wasn't a situation where he was like, no, you can't take this job, especially with what they were going to infuse into this. And I think from Pry's standpoint, like, he has to understand that, like, James Franklin has been there, done that in terms of like what he's accomplished in the sport. Obviously, he's never won a national championship. That's something he's still chasing. But in terms of caliber of coach that he is, I don't think a lot of people are disputing the type of coach James Franklin is. So, you know, I think Pry has an understanding that there's going to be a financial commitment for a coach like Franklin that probably was not going to be present for somebody like him, a first-time head coach, right? In Pry. All that to say, Pry didn't scare Franklin away from this job at all, obviously. You know, I think early on there were some folks on social media and stuff like that saying like, will that be a sticking point? And like, in no way, shape, or form was him replacing his guy like a sticking point in this. That wasn't it at all. A lot of it in terms of the waiting time, right? They were negotiating a buyout with Penn State. So, you know, Franklin was owed like it's bounced around a little bit. Pete Thamel said 49 million. I've heard closer to 50. Whatever. He was owed a lot of money from Penn State, and that number seems to vary. And I'm sure there's some stipulations as to why it varies a little bit. But ultimately, Penn State is only paying $9 million of the buyout in terms of like offsetting the contract. I said on this podcast, and we all kind of agreed, you know, as this was going on, we were, you know, talking about this on the show, that Virginia Tech was probably going to get screwed on this contract. And Penn State only paying $9 million. We'll see what the final numbers end up being. It's going to be north of $11 million a year. Where that ends up falling, we'll see. Like the final numbers with, you know, I don't know what it'll end up being end of the day with like incentives and everything else. But the base is going to be over 11 million. And that's a lot of money for anybody. Virginia Tech especially. They historically have never paid that for a head coach, but they're being really serious about this, right? With next stage of realignment and everything else. And I think from a Virginia Tech standpoint, you're incurring a lot of risk with this from the standpoint of how much money it's going to cost you to pay for a guy like James Franklin. But Tech was negotiating from a position of weakness here all along, right? They needed James Franklin a lot more than he needed them. I think Virginia Tech's very fortunate that he made the decision to come to Blacksburg. But yeah, start to finish, I don't want to say it was chaotic. It just took some time, right? I think the chaos was in a lot of this was the chaos in the waiting. Like, was Franklin actually serious about this? And what was the market going to look like outside of Blacksburg? And a lot of things fell Virginia Tech's way too, right? Like, Florida State can't afford to pay the buyout for Norvell. You know, they'd rather not pay him $60 million to go away or whatever it is. They don't want to pay that unless they have to. So like that broke Virginia Tech's way. Auburn took a while to open. You know, Hugh Freeze held on for dear life and then was finally let go. And then Auburn is interested in some other candidates, you know, before Franklin was kind of on their radar. I mean, I think Franklin was not their top guy, and he was not in that top tier of guys, right? I think you had to go down the list a little bit before they wanted to pay somebody like Franklin. And a lot of this isn't because of the caliber of James Franklin as a coach. It's really just like you got to consider the buyouts these schools are paying to make guy or guys, plural, in Auburn's case, go away. Like they had to pay a buyout to Harsin. They hire Freeze for a lot of money. Doesn't work out. Now they got to pay another buyout. And Auburn's got money, but Franklin's going to command a lot too. So it's like you're paying a huge buyout, and now you got to pay a guy in the salary range of like a top 5 or 6 coach in the sport. Like the appetite is probably not going to be there, right? So I think that's what's happening at Auburn. Florida, don't think they were really ever too interested in Franklin. So really, this was a matter of Auburn. In my opinion, this was a matter of Auburn and Florida State. Arkansas, that was, I could never really substantiate any of that. There was a lot of like, oh, Arkansas is like a serious suitor for Franklin. I didn't get that sense at all. That seemed like a smoke/fake leverage play message board thing. I don't think he was ever really too involved at Arkansas. I think he was, if it came down to Virginia Tech and Arkansas, I think Virginia Tech had a much more compelling case just because of where they're at with the funding and stuff like that. But this got really serious over the last 2 weeks. I tweeted out the eyes thing, which I got raked over the coals for about a week and a half ago. That was when I first heard it was like really close. Like they were close to getting the MOU signed. There were some hangups over NIL, right? How much, money were they going to be able to commit to paying players in NIL? And that's in addition to the rev sharing, right? So, that was a piece that took some time. They worked through that. And then once they got through that, it was a matter of, okay, how much is Penn State going to offset on the buyout? And once that started getting really close, that's when you're like, okay, now we're going to sign the MOU. So that was Friday. And you guys name on the dotted line there. Now it's like, all right, major terms have been agreed to. NIL rev share have been agreed to. Now we're down to just a handful of things in the contract that we got to hammer out over the weekend. And Virginia Tech, like, they had board of visitors meetings this week, right? Early in the week.
Today and tomorrow.
And there was an agenda that was released. Obviously, it's public information, and there wasn't anything out there. We were actually texting about this yesterday, Ricky. There wasn't anything out there in that agenda about any sort of personnel matters. Like, obviously, they're not going to put in there, like, even if there was, they're not going to put in there like, oh yeah, James Franklin contract. We're going to talk about. No, they personnel matter related to athletic department is what you sometimes see if it's in there. They didn't have any of that. At like 12:30 today, I get a text saying that actually there is a personnel meeting, and it's at 11:45, and like it's happening now, So you get that text, and then I'm going back and forth with 40. I'm like, hey, there might be a personnel meeting. Let's look into this. And then you go back to the agenda, and 11:45 is when they had like lunch for an hour.
Executive
it's like,
closed lunch.
Yeah. Right. It's like, okay. But that was silent. That was really quiet for a couple hours. It's like, all right, like things might be percolating, and then it was quiet. It's like, all right. Yeah. And then you just say, okay, it's done. And then it's like you have literally seconds to get your story up, your tweet up, seconds, because Thamel's already got you beat. And it's like, all right. So that's how that goes, which I don't really care. I had the story prepped and all that stuff for really a couple of weeks. It was just a matter of like hitting publish. So like the tweet part, I don't care as much about that as just the story being ready. So the story was ready and all that, but it was a lot of waiting. And there were some texts from some buddies. Like you texted me, my buddy Johnny texted me from New Jersey. He's like, hey, what's the deal with Franklin? We hearing today? Johnny actually texted me 10 minutes before it broke, and he was like, what's going on? I said, it's a little quiet, not sure. And then literally like 10, 15 minutes later, it's like, okay, it arrived. But it wasn't a matter, Rick, of like, there's going to be a falling out here. It was more like, when are they finalizing? So they got home, and this is getting it hired. That was just kind of the process, but the hire specifically, a gigantic coup for Virginia Tech. I don't really care what it costs to get him. Like, to get him at this stage of your program is just massive, 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 trying to turn things around.
Yeah. So first thing, there's a couple comments I want to acknowledge from the Basketball Conference podcast, friend and family to Mike McDaniel, producer Scott, saying he broke the news. Whatever you have to tell yourself at night, Scott, I'll just put it that way.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
They're early stages of talks.
Yeah. This whole thing, I think, can be encapsulated with this comment here from Will Clark. If he says, if I told you all 2 months ago that Pry would be fired and we'd hire someone like James Franklin, how hard would you have laughed? When James Franklin was fired, and I actually went and looked at the timeline of this earlier today, Franklin was fired on October 12th. I assumed that this was just a pipe dream. At no point did I think Virginia Tech would seriously be able to hire James Franklin. And Mike, I like how you brought up the fact that there were some things that fell Virginia Tech's way here. And in going through this timeline, there were a few spots that I thought fell Virginia Tech's way, especially. Nebraska signing Matt Rule to an extension. Basically, any Big Ten job that didn't open, I thought was a good thing for Virginia Tech. And we saw Kurt Zagnetti sign an extension earlier in the year. Matt Rule signs an extension. SMU signs Rhett Lashley to an extension, which I think actually kind of negatively impacted Virginia Tech in the sense of that Lashley was a possibility at Arkansas. But we felt pretty good about this, Mike, a few weeks ago. And November 2nd rolls around and Auburn fires Hugh Freeze. And that was when I think our group, especially me, you, and Andrew, started to maybe waver a little bit on the confidence that they could get this done. It felt like a job like Auburn would be an impediment to Virginia Tech being able to get James Franklin to sign. Wisconsin didn't open up. That they announced just a few days later that Luke Fickell was returning, which was another option off the board. But the whole Auburn thing was kind of the only thing I was really concerned about at all. But then as time moved on, it became pretty clear that Auburn was looking at a few different guys, and they were not as high on James Franklin as the Hokies were. And Mike Norvell has, I wouldn't say resurrected his season, but he's been able to win a couple games, including this Saturday against Tech. And that and Florida State not being in a good financial position took them off the board. And I think James Franklin realized this was as good as it was going to get. And I don't know that Franklin fell in love with the Hokies early on in the process, but he realized that if he wanted to coach, big-time college football, it was going to happen in Blacksburg. And, there's a few things I think we need to say right off the top here. The entire search committee, especially John Rakovich, the Board of Visitors rector, Jay Pearson played a huge role in this. Tim Sands played a huge role in this. Eddie Royal, Bud Foster. There's a bunch of other people. We also have to include Whit Babcock, Mike. He did play a role in this. Whether or not he played a large one is probably up for debate, but all these folks deserve a round of applause, I think. Just an incredibly solid process. They won the information battle early on with the Board of Visitors vote and made it clear that the Hokies were not here to fool around anymore. That helped put Virginia Tech in the conversation for somebody like James Franklin. Let's be abundantly clear with this. If Virginia Tech does not commit this kind of money to the football program and to athletics in general, James Franklin isn't even considering Virginia Tech. Not even close, right?
Yep.
So credit to the university leadership for even though they were late to the party here, they were able to get this information out, get this vote done, and make it clear to candidates that Virginia Tech was going to be an elite job that was open this year. And I credit all of them for getting this done. I give them credit for the patience. Like, there were a couple times where we thought Virginia Tech might have to walk away here because they could not get a commitment from James Franklin. But the Hokies stuck with it. They got through the process. They got everything signed. And here we are, Mike. This is a brand new era for Virginia Tech athletics, especially for the football program, obviously, but for the university as a whole. This is the kind of hire that elevates your football program, your athletic department, and your university in the eyes of people across the country.
Yeah, I mean, it's a grand slam. My colleague Brian Fisher at Sports Illustrated did he's doing coaching grades for all the hires. This obviously the first one of the cycle. It's an A. I mean, yeah. It's an A. I read.
It's kind of rare, right? Like coaching grades, even the good ones usually get Bs.
Andrea Adelson and Adam Rittenberg from ESPN, obviously, both of them are pretty tied in. They also did coaching grades Bs. It's an A. Like, I mean, it's a home run. I don't know. Like, I'm gonna have a lot of trouble telling you the negatives. Like, the negative on James Franklin is he has a bad record against top 5 opponents. I got good news for everybody. Virginia Tech would love to be in a position where they are consistently playing top 5 opponents, right?
Yeah.
Like, even in the ACC's best year right now, with how Clemson is taking a step back, Florida State's taking a step back, like, you're not playing a lot of top 5 opponents right now. So if you're having issues with top 5 opponents, that means you're probably in the college football playoff or in the conference title game, or which high rent district problems for considering like where this program's been the last decade or so. Yeah, I mean it's a home run. He recruits Virginia extremely well, right? Like, he's owned the DMV in recruiting in terms of winning big time recruits over Virginia Tech. He's a program builder. He's done it multiple places, built up Vanderbilt in a very short time, jumps to Penn State, builds that up to the point where he's having really consistent success, 8, 9, 10 win seasons, and even better over the last couple of years. A proven head coach, a guy who's going to put together what I believe will be the best coaching staff that Virginia Tech's had in quite some time. Like, I don't think you're going to get a situation here where he's hiring first-time play callers, which has been an issue with the last couple of coaching staffs. You're not going to have that here, I don't think. He's recruited quarterbacks well. Now, we can talk about the development of Drew Aller and that kind of stuff. Like, let's have a discussion about, for sure. And we're not going to back down from that. I mean, those are some questions we're going to have because we've seen quarterback growth kind of stunted, but he gets him in the building. He gets him in the building, which I think is important. And then hopefully he's learned right from, what ultimately led to his downfall at Penn State, which really was the development of quarterbacks. Everybody's talking about like the record, but underscoring that is Drew Aller never turned into the quarterback that everybody thought he was going to be. I mean, he was a big time recruit, right? And he brings in Bo Pribula, and he's a big time recruit, and they can't keep him in the door because Drew Aller's going to come back another year. And he kind of chose the wrong guy. I mean, Pribula, before he got hurt at Missouri, was having a pretty good year. So it's not like he can't get quarterbacks. It's a matter of whether or not, you develop them consistently. Like, he probably got more out of less with Trace McSorley, but that's going back a little bit,
Still one of the better college football quarterbacks in the last 15 years, Trace McSorley.
And I mean, Sean Clifford was fine, got them. Yeah, I mean, they were in Big Ten contention. They were having trouble beating Michigan and Ohio State. That's the other thing about the top 5 record. It's like, okay, a lot of those games were Michigan and Ohio State. There's like a random Iowa game in there. It's like, okay,
yeah,
you were consistently in the top 10. You were having trouble, and this is when Michigan was with Harbaugh, and they were like top of the sport and competing for national titles. It was like, okay, so you can't beat Michigan, you can't beat Ohio State. Now let's go down the list. This was the same thing with Brian Kelly at Notre Dame. It's like, okay, let's go down the list. He's having issues against these types of opponents too. How many of these teams in the top 10 are consistently beating Michigan and Ohio State and Alabama, for example? It's like not that many, not that many.
Yeah.
So you gotta look into that record a little bit too. I don't think this is going to be an offensive coordinator that's Andy Kotelnicki. Like, I would be pretty surprised if he brought, and by the way, like, Kotelnicki was pretty high on folks' lists last couple coaching cycles, and Penn State has flamed out a bit offensively this year, obviously, and he's going to be looking for a new job, I think. So depending on who the new coach is, I don't know, but I don't think I would be pretty surprised if Franklin brought him with him, considering kind of what led to his downfall at Penn State. But it's a big time hire, Rick. It's insane. I cannot believe as an alum, I cannot believe they pulled this off.
Yeah, I was telling some buddies before we started recording today, this is the most excited that I've been about Virginia Tech football since 2018, before the season. Justin Fuente had won 19 games in 2 years, including the 2016 ACC championship game where they nearly knocked off Clemson. I felt pretty damn good about the program at that point, and obviously things did not work out, but this is the most optimistic this fan base has been in quite some time. And it's entirely warranted. Mike, I'm not known for being overly optimistic. I'm not known for getting super excited or getting hyped about things, but I think that this is really the kind of hire that could potentially change the course of Virginia Tech's athletic program for forever.
This
I'm
is
not,
the biggest hire in school history, by the way. Like
yeah,
the
yeah.
Beamer turned out great because of the coach he became, but like when he was hired in Blacksburg, he
It was
was
not
not
a big
this.
deal. It was
Right.
not a big
Right.
deal.
Right.
And David Teal put up a good point earlier today. He's like, this is the biggest hire, the biggest coaching hire the ACC has made as far as hiring an accomplished college football coach. If you go back and look at the history of the conference, like the only one that even comes remotely close is somebody like Mark Richt, which kind of had a similar career at Georgia to what
Yeah.
James Franklin had at Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of Virginia Tech fans would kill for for
Yeah.
that level of
Yeah.
success.
Yep.
But you're getting someone that's won in the Big Ten. You're getting someone that's, again, like you said, Mike, put together two phenomenal programs at Vanderbilt and Penn State. He's coached up and down the East Coast. He's got the recruiting chops. He's got the ability to get people to buy in financially, which is critical, especially since a good chunk of the $229 million that Virginia Tech is trying to spend here is supposed to be through increased donations.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the kind of hire that gets people to open up the checkbook, right? And credit to Virginia Tech, they have already got stuff on the website about donate here, renew your season tickets, like that. This is exactly what they should be doing.
My roommate, one of my best friends on earth, Danny, sends me a text this afternoon after the story breaks. And he goes, this is like within an hour, he goes, yep, got that email about donations from Virginia Tech. They wasted no time.
Yeah, and they absolutely shouldn't. Here's a quote from James Franklin in the news release that Virginia Tech released earlier. Quote, I'm honored and humbled to join the Hokie family, said Franklin. Quote, my vision is simple: to restore unmatched excellence, to build something that lasts, and to serve this university, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and our amazing fan base with honor, integrity, and passion. I look forward to getting to work with our players, our staff, and the entire Virginia Tech community. There is also a quote in here from Whit Babcock, which I did find interesting because I still do wonder what his role is in this athletic department moving forward. But I find it hard to believe that James Franklin would be coming to Virginia Tech if he knew that Whit Babcock was going to be in the way of James Franklin getting what James Franklin needs.
Right.
Mike, I think the biggest part, and this is something I tweeted about when Franklin was fired, I think the biggest part about Franklin, honestly, is going to be what is his mindset moving forward. I mean, he just got $9 million in a lump sum from Penn State. That was reported earlier today. And he's going to get a pretty fat contract with a probably rather large buyout. We'll get the financials here soon. Is he pissed off? Is he ready to start putting his foot on somebody's throat? Because if he is, then he can have more success at Virginia Tech than he had at Penn State. He could win more games. He could contend for more national championships if he comes in with that mindset. And the reason I say that is because the ACC is not the Big Ten, as we've talked about a ton of times on this show. There's not an Ohio State looming in this conference. Clemson's down, Florida State's down, Georgia Tech, SMU, eminently gettable. Those schools are all over the place in terms of consistency. This is a conference that you can come in and dominate if you can build a solid program. And I think that that's something that James Franklin is going to need to do. I want to read a quote from our buddy Andrew who is several time zones away and was unable to make it for the show. But this is directly from Andrew, and he wanted to make sure we shared this quote. Andrew is extremely pleased with this hire. This is the best chance we have at being good. I have a direct line with Bailey Angle, and within 10 minutes of the news, I renewed my tickets and doubled my donation. Hokie fans, I love you all. Cheers to the future. Couldn't have said it much better myself, Andrew.
That was not ChatGPT. That was
Nope.
We didn't just make that up.
That was straight from the heart.
We were trying to figure out what time to record, and he goes, "I'm still in Spain, but here it is."
Good question here from the comment section from Low Country Living. Will Mike make his return to Blacksburg in 2026?
You bet your ass I will.
Oh, there we go. Now we're talking.
Yeah.
James Franklin is going to get Mike McDaniel to Blacksburg. Mike, James Franklin was coaching for a spot in the national championship game not even a year ago.
It's insane. Yeah.
And he's now coaching our team.
I mean, it's ridiculous. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. When Tech pulled the trigger and decided they were going to move on from Brent Pry, nobody could have envisioned this happening. Yeah. I mean, this predates Penn State losing to Oregon. This predates them obviously losing to Northwestern and UCLA. And when they fired Franklin, that was even a little bit surprising. You know, it was, I think, you know, after the UCLA loss, right, it was like, all right, Penn State has now lost in double overtime at home to Oregon in a game they could have easily won, right? Lose that game. Oh, the narrative. He can't beat top 5 teams. Okay, fine. You lose to UCLA, who, by the way, was on an interim because they fired their coach, Deshaun Foster, the same day Virginia Tech fired Brent Pry. Now it's like, wow, that's Oregon beat you twice. You know, it's like, okay, that's shocking. Because the one thing about James Franklin at Penn State is that once he got the program humming, they won the games they were supposed to. The knock on him was that they couldn't win the big one. It was but they beat the teams they were supposed to beat. So even coming off of a loss like that against Oregon, historically, Penn State would take care of business against a team like UCLA, especially with interim head coach. Obviously, they didn't do that. That was a shocking loss. A shocking loss. Now you're starting to see stories pop up everywhere, and you know, my colleagues at Sports Illustrated, Brian Fisher, Pat Forty, they're talking about, okay, is this sustainable for Franklin at Penn State? So, like, you know, everybody's talking about a possibility of a parting of ways at some point. Like, is this sustainable? Is it best that they both, you know, kind of go their separate ways sort of thing? Are they better off trying something new, both sides? That was the discussion after UCLA. Then you lose Northwestern, and the next day it's like, oh, they're firing him. It's like, what? So when that happens, it's like, all right, Virginia Tech is casting a wide net. Obviously, they're going to at least touch base to see if he would even be interested. So then for the interest to be reciprocated, right, a month ago, and then for things to heat up the way that it had over the last couple of weeks, the ability for Virginia Tech to close, considering who the agent is, considering who James Franklin, the caliber of coach is, considering how bad Virginia Tech has been as a program for the last decade. It's only been a couple seasons where we can even point to and say, like, yeah, that was a pretty good year. Like, it hasn't happened all that often. You know, more often than not, Virginia Tech's trying to beat Virginia to get to bowl eligibility. So, I mean, to go from that to then hiring Franklin, obviously the monetary investment, like you said earlier, Ricky, like that's the only way this gets done, is having the monetary investment to lay out the vision that to a coach like James Franklin, who's had everything at his disposal at Penn State with the Big Ten money and everything like that, to even be able to make a pitch to him that, hey, you can win here. Like, this is our financial investment. You can build what you want to build here to the caliber that you expect. And that was a big part of negotiations. Like, can they get there from an NIL revenue sharing standpoint? Can they get there?
And we both heard, Mike, that Virginia Tech said yes, that they got there. To the number I've heard, Mike, is $30 million for the roster next year between revenue share and
Yeah.
NIL.
hmm
Which, if that's the case, that's essentially what Texas Tech paid for their
Yeah.
roster this year. And look at what Texas Tech is doing. I mean,
Right.
they're competing for a national championship right now,
Yeah.
and that is the blueprint now. The 12-team playoff with the 5 highest ranked conference champions has made the Big 12 and the AC. It's given those schools access. Now, yes, the SEC and the Big 10 are going to have multiple teams in every year, and that's not going to change anytime soon. But if you win 9 or 10 games and you win the ACC, you're probably in the playoff. And at that point, it's crapshoot.
There was a discussion a week ago about, what if Duke goes 9-4? Are they in the playoff out of the ACC? That was a discussion last
Yeah.
Tuesday. 6 days ago, that was a discussion.
Yeah.
And obviously Duke lost this weekend to UVA, right? Duke lost. So, I mean, we can stop doing that whole charade about Duke now, which is good. But like, that was my point is like, that was a discussion. So you're telling me that you can't compete with all this money and you're James Franklin, you're program builder. Virginia Tech, I think, especially with the NIL, I think the term sleeping giant is overused, right? But and it's a new age of college football. Now you have to have the money. I think now that Virginia Tech is committing to putting those funds into this football program, I think Virginia Tech really is one of those schools that has been down for a while, but has the fan support has never wavered. The fan support has been there. Like it has been there, continues to be there. And it's a position where you can win, especially with the money they're putting into the program with a coach like Franklin. It was a compelling pitch for Virginia Tech. And I think what makes it easier for Franklin is he's had the history in the state of Virginia in terms of recruiting. He knows the landscape. He knows the schools. He knows the coaches. He knows the prospects. He's been recruiting all of them.
He's going to be in his backyard. He's going to be in his wheelhouse. He's going to be recruiting quite literally the same footprint, essentially, that he was recruiting at Penn State.
And
he's going to recruit. He's going to recruit Pennsylvania. He's going to recruit New Jersey. He's going to recruit Maryland, DC, Northern Virginia, the 757, Richmond. He'll probably dip down into Carolina and try and get into Raleigh and Charlotte, but he's going to be in his wheelhouse. This is not going to be anything new to him.
No, which I think is exciting in terms of the way you can flip a roster, how quickly you can turn things around. We're not in an era anymore, especially not at schools that have money or that purport themselves to have money, I guess in Virginia Tech's case, because again, a lot of this is going to come, especially in the future years, a lot of this is going to come from us, the fans, right?
Yep.
Donations. That's kind of how it's earmarked, especially in future years. Like, you can flip a roster quickly. This isn't it's going to be a 3 or 4 year build. No. Is it going to be peak? Like, is 2026 going to be the best year James Franklin has at Virginia Tech? Probably not, right? I mean, probably not.
And that's okay. I'm not expecting him to win 10 games next year. That is not my expectation next year.
But can he flip the roster quickly? I mean, you go on any of the recruiting sites, VT Scoop, On 3, whoever.
Yeah.
VT Scoop. I rely on those guys for the recruiting. if I had to pick a site, shout out VT Scoop. But like, they're going to be Franklin's going to be flipping guys from these had committed to Penn State. I mean, he's going to be flipping the roster quickly here, and he's already been evaluating the current roster. Like, once this became a more serious option for him, obviously he's going to take a look at what's already there and see who he's interested in keeping and what the current state of things are. Which coaches is he going to keep? I've heard some stuff out there already from other places talking about maybe Elijah Brooks. I heard Chris Coleman at Tech Sideline mention that on the podcast today. Could he stick around because of how he's got a history with Franklin and he's recruited this area? Could he be a guy that stays on with the staff? Fontel Mines with
running backs too.
Right.
Like,
right.
Is running back. Can't argue with the numbers.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Like, Fontel Mines has a history with Franklin. Could he stay on in some capacity with the new staff? So, like, there are some guys on the coaching staff that could be sticking around. I don't expect a lot of guys, maybe one or two. And then I just think the recruiting is going to be so crucial here. But Franklin, if there's one thing we can say about James Franklin, it's that he can recruit. Like, he's had no problem
Never been
recruiting.
an issue.
And a lot of that now is money. No question about it.
But when everyone's offering the same number, which as we get further into the rev share era, it's going to be a lot easier for schools to match those numbers.
Mm-hmm.
You're still going to have to develop these relationships.
It's going to be relationships. Yep.
Like the money is going to get you in the door, and then you're going to win them with your personality and your ability to recruit.
Yep. I thought Kirby Smart's comment this weekend, Georgia beats Texas, and he goes in the post game and he said, the thing about this era, he said, everybody wants a check, is what he was saying. Everybody wants their money. He goes, well, we give out the checks here, but we're also hitting people, like he was talking about the physicality of the line of scrimmage and how Georgia won that game. They're the more physical team. I think that was clear watching the game. He goes, we're not just writing checks here. Like we're trying to dominate the line of scrimmage. We're hitting people here. Like we're paying people and we're hitting. So if you want to come to, if you're interested in that, you're coming to Georgia. And yeah, I think it is going to still come down to relationships, especially when all things are created equal. And that's never going to be completely the case in college football, but they're trying to get to that point with revenue sharing, and NIL is still kind of the Wild West, but we're getting more semblance of stability. I think it's clear with how there's talent everywhere. There's more teams competing and getting into more competitive games. National champions, I think more often than not, are going to have a loss or two. I think it's very rare we're going to have an undefeated national champion moving forward, just because size of conferences, who you're playing. So,
yeah, for sure. A couple comments I want to get to before I have a question for both of us to answer. We touched on this briefly, but Greg G on YouTube, I'm curious, gents, how does this hire impact Witt's future at Virginia Tech? My read on this from the start, Mike, was Witt was going to stick around and help get them through this process, given that he's the only one in the building that's hired a head coach before. I do believe that Rakovich and Jay Pearson and Bud Foster and Eddie Royal were the ones that were really kind of running the show and kind of pushing people where they need to be pushed. And my gut, I do not have inside reporting on this, so I could easily be wrong here. But my gut is that Witt helped guide them through that process in terms of, this is how you're going to get in touch with folks. This is how we're going to get, these interviews done. These are the types of things that we probably should ask. Now that this process is done, Mike, I think that there's a possibility that Witt will find himself mutually parting ways with Virginia Tech maybe by the end of the year. I don't know if it'll happen before then, but I imagine it could happen here relatively soon.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he stuck around. I don't think this was a transition period, and
I'm sure that James Franklin said he wouldn't mind having some input on who his boss might be. Given how much money they're going to be paying James Franklin, it's probably not a bad idea.
Right. Yeah, this was a transition thing with Witt, so I don't know the timeline in terms of him stepping down, but I still think that's the most likely outcome, is what I would say.
One more from Twitter. Dave the Barber, Enter Sandman is going to hit a lot harder than ever before. What sucks, Mike, is the first game next year is VMI, so I don't know. I don't know how hard that one's going to hit, but I can promise you that the first time they play a reasonable opponent in Lane Stadium, it's going to feel a whole hell of a lot different. The question I had, Mike, and as someone who talks about the entirety of the ACC on a regular basis, I'm interested to get your thoughts here. Where does James Franklin rank amongst ACC coaches right now?
So right now, current moment,
Yep.
he's the best coach in the ACC. And that's not, and Dabo's got 2 national titles. Like, I'm not here to, from a career standpoint, Dabo's accomplished more. Dabo's got 2 national titles. You can't look me in the eye right now and tell me that in this current era, paying players, transfer portal, recruiting, the current era, that James Franklin is not better positioned or that he's not a better coach in totality right this second than Dabo Swinney. Like, you can't tell me that based on what we've seen over Clemson since Trevor Lawrence left. Since COVID. It's been 5 years of this, just up and down the roller coaster.
Yeah.
I mean, Ricky, they're 5-5.
They were a national championship pick for some folks this year.
5-5.
Yeah, with a senior quarterback that's what, in his 3rd year starting.
Yeah, I mean, a veteran quarterback. Tom Allen's your defensive coordinator. Garrett Riley's your offensive coordinator, and you're 5-5.
Speaking
Like,
of Tom Allen,
There are some issues there.
I might watch that name. I mean, I'm not saying again, no inside info, but just based on past hirings, the familiarity there. Tom Allen's a name that wouldn't shock me. I'm not going to say he's the guy, but it wouldn't shock me.
Yep.
Yeah. If you look at the ACC, the only folks that I think give Franklin a run for their money in this era, I would still have included Dabo in that just because of the pedigree. But I think you bring up a good point, Mike. Dabo has not shown the ability to keep up with the times. And I would by no means fire Dabo Swinney because I'm not firing the guy with 2 national championships.
No.
But Dabo probably needs to do some introspection there and do it quickly. As far as the rest of the ACC is concerned, Jeff Brom, I think, is somebody that I don't know that he's better than Franklin, but he's at least somebody I would think about. It's certainly not Mike Norvell, even though Mike Norvell went 12-0, 13-0, I guess, a couple years ago. Rhett Lashley.
Mario, maybe.
Yeah, Mario's... I was going to get to Mario, but like if you put a gun to my head and you're asking me who I want coaching my team, I'm picking Rhett Lashley over Mario Cristobal. I think what Rhett's doing at SMU is phenomenal. They're putting money behind him. He just got an extension for a reason.
Ball coach.
Guy wins the ACC in his first year. He's serious. I mean, he's somebody that can coach, and as long as the money keeps flowing, I think SMU is going to be in the conversation to finish in the top 5 of the ACC every year, as long as he's there. And as much as I hate to say it, Pat Narduzzi, I mean, Pitt doesn't really have a lot of resources.
No, I think he's a fine coach. I'm just laughing because of what just transpired this weekend. Yeah.
I'm sure you love that. But no, Mike, you might be right. Franklin might be the best coach in the conference right now. And
Brent Key's another up and comer. I mean, Brent Key's getting considered for some big jobs too. He's done a great job at Georgia Tech, obviously.
Yeah, Brent Key's right on the nose there. Brent Key has the opposite problem of James Franklin. Brent Key tends to show up in the big games and then not show up when nobody's watching, which is odd. But yeah, we can't say it enough. This is the kind of move that elevates Virginia Tech to that upper echelon of the ACC. And we knew that the money was going to make a difference when they approved all that extra funding. But Mike, you know I've been beating this drum for months now. Virginia Tech has had a people problem more so than a resource problem.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? It doesn't have either a people problem or a resource problem now.
If you don't look, I mean, you got to if this doesn't work, you just throw your hands up. Be like, all right, this is just our lot in life. We're just going, this is just our lot in life. It's not going to happen for us. Frank was unbelievable for that period of time, and that's that. I don't want to be negative tonight. I'm just saying, like, you've done everything you could. You've infused money into the program. You've hired a very good proven coach who is at worst a top 10 coach in college football, evaluating the landscape at worst, right? What else do you do? Who can recruit Virginia and has had a lot of success at the top end of the sport in a really good conference in the Big Ten, who's turned around a Vanderbilt program in the SEC so he could even put himself in position to get that job in the Big Ten in the first place. What do you do? I mean, you throw your hands up. And I think too, like, this narrative's already out there that I've seen, just kind of reading people's reactions to it. He can, from a national level, not local Virginia Tech, but like at a national level, it's okay. He can position himself, right? He can compete for conference titles and college football playoff and all that at Virginia Tech and position himself for top tier jobs, right? And I don't think any of us would argue that, Virginia Tech's not LSU and they're not Alabama or Florida or Texas or Notre Dame or USC. Like, they're not in terms of like football jobs, they're not that, and they won't be, right? None of us are going to argue that.
There's a reason why Virginia Tech is not looking at Lane Kiffin.
Right. And look, if Franklin leaves for one of those jobs eventually, as a candidate, and leaves eventually for one of those jobs, it means he probably left, not even probably, it means he left Virginia Tech in a much better place than he found it.
Yep.
If he's our football Buzz Williams,
perfect.
We can't be that mad about, which is why, like, people, and people get mad. I don't want to go on a whole Buzz Williams rant, but like when people get mad about Buzz Williams and, the media and stuff like that, and he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Look, I get all that stuff. But the reason why you were in a position to hire Mike Young and have the basketball program in most years be a good competitive team in the ACC is because Buzz Williams was your head coach, right? And Virginia Tech is going to position itself really well if James Franklin turns into our football version of Buzz Williams, where he's here for a few years, turns the program around, starts competing for ACC titles, and then leaves. Would it suck? Yeah. I mean, it would suck.
Yeah.
But are you going to be in good position for the next guy to take it over? Absolutely. And that's all you can ask for, especially with conference realignment looming in 5 years. And I don't know, Franklin could be here a decade. Who knows? I wouldn't bet on it, but could he? Sure. He might just get to Blacksburg.
If he's here a decade, Mike, it means he's winning.
It means he's winning, right? Gets here, loves it. He's competing for conference titles. Virginia Tech's positioned itself well for realignment. They end up in, is it an ACC Big 12 merger? Are they in like that league? Are they in a Big 10 or the SEC? Who knows what the future holds? But Low Country Living brings up a good comment here. Rick, if you want to bring that up for me real quick. At 53 years old, this could very well be Franklin's last stop. Like, I wouldn't count on it because, like, guys are coaching in their 60s now. Like, look at Signetti at Indiana, which is like the example that everyone wants to use for everything now. But like, he's in his 60s, first huge job he's had. He's obviously killing it. They're positioned to compete for a national title. But yeah, could Franklin get here and love Blacksburg and be competing and be like, you know what, this is great. I feel like I can win a national title here. Could he get to that point where he feels like he could win a national championship at Virginia Tech? Guys, I mean, guys, for Virginia Tech's been really, really bad. If it's to that point, everything's gravy. Like, everything is just a cherry on top, Yeah. So, anyway.
Yeah.
I can't believe this.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
I'm honestly sick that Andrew's not here because it would be just a blast for all three of us to be able to be here. But, Mike, we started this show. What year was it? Was it 19?
Yeah,
20?
19. It was 19.
I want to say it was 19.
It was 19 because we first started recording. I was in my apartment in Reston,
Yeah.
so that was 19.
So
Yeah.
we've been recording since 2019, which means we have seen exactly 2 winning seasons in the history of this show. This has been one of the worst stretches of football in the school's history. The fact that we are now sitting here considering competing for conference championships and the thought of maybe being a national title contender in a couple years or a few years is just the wildest shit that you could possibly imagine. And fans enjoy this. Go ahead and get excited. I'm not one to sit here and stand for the Hokie Club and the Hokie Way and Triumph and all that stuff, but if you've got some discretionary income in this economy, which I know a lot of people don't, but if you do and you're looking for something to spend it on, throw a little Virginia Tech's way and take the ride.
Take the tax break too. Take the tax break at the end of the year.
Yeah. Couple things. I want to briefly talk about what we could potentially see this coaching staff looking like, because that's obviously going to be a critical part of whether or not this works. We already mentioned Kotelnicki from Penn State. I also don't think that this is happening. Penn State's offense is a bit of a mess. If Franklin has learned from Penn State, I think he's going to go in a different direction. It would not shock me if he goes, though, in a direction of someone that he's had some success with before. And that brings me to a certain individual that he saw in person this past weekend. Given how much coordinators are making these days, Mike, and given that this individual does not make more than $870,000 at his current head coaching job, what are the odds that Ricky Ronnie signs up for a 2 to 3 year deal to call plays for James Franklin?
I think it would be more likely if ODU wasn't having the season they're having, because they're having a pretty good year. But never say never. I mean, a lot of these coordinators or a lot of these head coaches are at the lower levels or even the higher levels. When we've seen like Chip Kelly, for example, he's like, I'm done with UCLA. I'll just go be the OC at Ohio State. And he did that, for a year. Nothing would surprise me, especially with what Virginia Tech is going to be paying their staff, which there's a significant investment in the coaching staff as well for this hire for James Franklin. So this isn't all, by the way, it's not all NIL and rev sharing. That was a big part of the negotiations, obviously, but it was also how well can I pay my assistants I want to bring.
James Franklin doesn't want to have to hire Chris Marv or the equivalent.
Right. Now
he wants to be able to hire somebody closer to Jim Knowles, who he just hired at Penn State.
Yep. Now, a couple of guys to keep an eye on. You mentioned Ricky Ronnie as potential OC. It could happen, but I don't know for sure. One that I think is more realistic is Joe Moorhead, who's at Akron.
Yep.
Who has...
Although I looked into this, Mike, his offenses have been pretty bad for the last few years. Just something to keep an eye on.
Akron, Rick.
I know.
Akron.
I know.
He's had good offenses other places.
Yes.
When he's had talent, he's had good offenses. The guy can still coach. It's I would try to get out of that Akron job. That's a tough place to go win. I was shocked.
Especially if you're trying to, if you're going to be offered $1 million plus and probably a 2 to 3 year deal at Virginia Tech.
Yeah. I would keep an eye on him.
I want to bring up the Ronnie thing one more point. Low Country Living about Ronnie says, I think you're onto something there. Joseph could be the quarterback next year. Colton Joseph is a sophomore.
Yeah.
And I didn't think he was worth a damn before the Virginia Tech game. Since that point, Mike,
I stand corrected.
He's turned into one of the best quarterbacks in the Sun Belt.
Yep.
And I don't think he's going to be staying at ODU anyway.
Correct.
It wouldn't shock me if he gets plucked by somebody.
Yeah, I agree.
So if Ronnie's going to be losing his quarterback, and I haven't looked at that roster, but I don't know how many guys that they could be losing to graduation, let alone to the portal. Maybe he realizes, look, this is as good as it gets at Old Dominion, and I'm going to go make more money. I'm going to get a fresh contract, and I'm going to get to play in the same area of the country that I've been playing in. I mean, it would be wild for him to blow the doors off of Virginia Tech inside Lane Stadium and then come be the play caller, but I don't think it's not a zero possibility. I'll put it that way.
It's definitely not a zero possibility.
Yeah.
Definitely not. Defense, like defensive coordinator wise, a couple names that I think they're part of the Franklin tree. They've coached with Franklin before. Bob Shoop, who's currently at Vanderbilt.
That was the first name I saw when I started doing some research, Mike.
Senior defensive analyst at Vanderbilt. He was a defensive coordinator under Franklin at Penn State for a year before leaving for a Tennessee job. Same gig, just paid more at the time. Went to Tennessee. He's bounced around a little bit since then. So your concern is staying power and how good of a defense is he going to put together? But that's a name that could make sense. Robert Livingston at Colorado, defensive coordinator. He was a quality control analyst at Vanderbilt under Franklin. He's held a number of different jobs, young, up-and-comer. Dion loves him. Mixed results at Colorado. He's only been defense coordinator a couple of years now, but that's another potential name as far as like guys who have coached with Franklin before. But I don't have any sort of intel in terms of what the staff's going to look like or anything like that. It's so early, but just like when the Tech head coaching job opened, like there are some names that you could point to as definite possibilities. Obviously, James Franklin was not on our initial list. So it's unbelievable. I still cannot believe this is happening. This is shocking. But
yeah, I'm gonna stand by. I think Tom Allen's a possibility. I don't know if Dabo would want to move on from Tom Allen, given how inconsistent that team has been this year. I don't see it happening, but Jim Knowles could follow him. For all the issues that Penn State had, defense wasn't really one of them until the UCLA game.
And Jim Knowles was on the board for Pry as defensive coordinator, and I don't know.
I don't think they had the money.
Varying, yeah. I mean, your mileage may vary in terms of how close you think it was, and a lot of people thought it was a lot closer than I did.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's another one where it's like, all right, you have the money now. Mm-hmm. And obviously Franklin just hired Knowles to Penn State. And would Knowles be interested in coming to Blacksburg now? Maybe.
You want to talk about a veteran play caller, Mike. Jim Knowles would be that guy. And also it would be important to note that Ricky Ronnie coached under Jim Knowles at Cornell. So
it's a coaching tree.
Yeah. Brent Pry, thoughts?
It's too soon, I think. I think it's too soon. You never say never to stuff like this, though. Like,
those guys are so tight, Mike. I mean,
yeah, I know.
The whole part about like Brent Pry not sabotaging this process should not be overlooked.
Yeah, and I think
I've seen it mentioned a couple different places, but Brent could have told James, "This is just a shit show. Do not come here. You'd be wasting your time, tarnishing your legacy. Don't come here."
Right, and the fact that he didn't.
Yeah, I mean, Brent has been a phenomenal ambassador for the school and for the university in general. Things obviously did not work out for him here at Virginia Tech. I don't know if he has any interest in coaching again, let alone coaching at the school that fired him.
Right.
But I've seen weirder things.
I mean,
And given how tight those two are, I didn't realize that they were this tight when Virginia Tech hired Brent Pry. But as we've been here and Brent's been in Blacksburg, I've learned just how tight those two are. Yeah, I think that, again, a non-zero chance. Put it that way.
yeah. Probably not as defensive coordinator, but I could see him in like a different role. I think it's just too soon. But I don't know that for sure, especially considering how this has gone and how, I mean, Pry was open. From what I've heard, Pry was open about this job with Franklin and didn't scare him off, which tells you everything you need to know. And that's who Pry, I mean, that's also who Pry is, right? I mean, nobody's ever questioned the integrity of Brent Pry.
Yeah.
So
another name, Low Country Living's on a roll tonight. Tim Banks, who's the defensive coordinator at Tennessee, and I don't know much about him. However, based on his background, I'm assuming that him and Franklin worked together at Maryland back in the day.
yeah, and I think Banks is going to get a head coaching job soon, so he might just stick it out at Tennessee. Honestly,
yeah. Mike, if you had to pick one assistant on, this will be the last thing, then we'll get out of here over an hour. But I think this warrants a bit longer of a show. Pick one assistant if you're going to retain one. Who is it going to be?
Brooks, hands down.
Okay.
How about you?
Brooks or JC?
Yeah.
I think what JC's done has been kind of overlooked. The defensive line has been the best unit on the team for a bit now.
Yeah.
And he's done it with a lot of different guys. He's got some younger guys that he's developed that have been guys that have either sat a year or sat a couple years or have progressed throughout their career. I think that JC has done a phenomenal job. If you're looking for somebody that's an ambassador for the school and is going to sell the program, nobody does it better than anyone on the current staff than JC. But if we're looking at what I think is more realistic, I think Brooks is probably the guy. He's proven that he can recruit at running back. He's proven that he can coach at running back. His familiarity with the region is hard to overcome. I think he's a pretty damn solid option. Fontel Mines is another name I've seen. I'm not as high on Fontel Mines as some others. I know that he's been pretty solid of a recruiter, but hasn't done a whole lot in terms of receiver development as far as I'm concerned. And Mike, I think the biggest trait that I'm going to be looking for when it comes to Virginia Tech assistants, I want guys that can coach.
Yeah.
I'm not all that worried about the recruiting at this point, because I think Franklin can do a lot of that. There should be a couple guys on this staff that can be ace recruiters, but primarily speaking, I want ball coaches. I want guys that know ball. I want guys that have done this for a while. I want some older dudes. I want some guys that have been through the battles and have already learned their lessons when it comes to coaching and are going to be able to go out there and develop guys. That's still a huge part of this, is being able to get guys to play together. So we're an hour and 9 minutes, Mike. Anything else before we wrap up a fun pod tonight?
As an alum, this is so fucking cool. I mean, this is so fucking cool.
As someone who's been hate watching James Franklin for years, Mike,
I couldn't be happier. He's the head coach.
I'm very happy.
Come on down, man.
Yeah.
Welcome to the family, so to speak. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Unreal. Unreal.
Yeah. Look, I think we're going to be having a ton of fun on this show over the next year. We're going to be talking coaching staff. We're going to be talking transfers. We're going to be talking high school recruiting. There's going to be a lot of new stuff that we're going to have to get into. And some of the off seasons lately haven't been as fun, Mike. I think this one's going to be pretty damn enjoyable. If you're listening to this, which we have a ton of people in the live show right now on YouTube, first of all, thank you. We really appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you tap the bell so you get the notifications. You know exactly when we're going to go live. Follow us on Twitter or X, whatever you're calling it these days. All of our episodes get posted there as well.
One more thing, Rick.
Yeah, go ahead.
One more thing to mention that we haven't yet. So Franklin is going to be announced on Wednesday.
Yes.
Right. Formal press conference, all that good stuff. Virginia Tech men's basketball is pretty good. And they got a home game on Wednesday night against Bryant. That James Franklin half-court introduction is going to hit like crack. Oh, my God.
You know it's coming.
I'm here with my family. Do the whole Brian Kelly.
Oh, God, no. James, you don't have to talk like you're.
You don't have to do that.
You don't have to talk like you're from Appalachia. It's okay. No, and if you're in Blacksburg, go to that game. Go to the press conference. If you don't work, if you're retired. But if you have a job, go to the game Wednesday night. I think you'd enjoy it. I want to make sure folks are knowing wherever they can get our stuff at. Again, YouTube, make sure you subscribe, tap the bell, follow us on X, follow Mike McDaniel SI, follow at Ricky the Blue, follow at Andrew Alex Radio, at Hokie Hangover, at Izzy Post. All of our content, whether it be episodes, written, Mike's got his story up on Sports Illustrated. You can go read it there. Our photo gallery from the Florida State game is up. I don't know that we're going to recap the Florida State game. We had a shit ton of penalties, and they lost.
They were bad.
That's what it is.
It was bad. I mean,
I will say, though, Tallahassee was a great atmosphere.
Oh.
Florida State fans showed out. It was a ton of fun. Great in-game atmosphere. Really enjoyed it. Obviously wish we could have won, but that's besides the point. We won today. Virginia Tech won today. We'll be back.
Hey, Rick, real quick. Grade the coaching search. A. You?
You have to feel better.
You have to feel bad. I mean, you feel better or feel worse?
Yeah. It's an A+.
Yeah, it's an A+.
It's an A+. Press conference is going to be Wednesday. Mike, I would assume we'll go ahead and record something Wednesday night, and we'll talk about all the stuff that comes out of that. I'm sure we'll get some good quotes from the presser. We'll do maybe a quick preview of Miami this weekend. But until then, folks, enjoy it, crack open a cold one, and go Hokies.